Okay, so great to have you with us, whether you're here live this morning or you're catching up with this later on off of a YouTube. Going to be doing some very fun uh, clearing stuff today. So some of you were with me last Wednesday when we talked about these two different kinds of spiritual practices. I want to refer very quickly to the overhead projector model, that little metaphor, which is one of my favorite metaphors for a human being. You know, the light in the box and the plane of glass and the stack of transparencies. And so we've talked about how this stack of transparencies, if it gets really high and unresolved and messy, it inhibits, it obscures the light coming through, right? So that what ends up on the screen is a mess if there's any light coming onto the screen at all. So we talked last Wednesday about two categories of spiritual experiences. One category is spiritual practices, I should say. One category is a spiritual practice that seeks to get to the light, to perceive the light, to discover the light, to attune to the light, and ultimately to merge into or realize the light as the essence of one's being. So those are wonderful practices. We did some of those. There are, of course, numerous practices from various traditions seeking to connect to the light. The other category of experience, of spiritual practice, is those practices that seek to look at the transparencies, that seek to clear off the glass of all the transparencies that have stacked up there, over the lifetimes. If you embrace a multi-lifetime journey, even if it's just this lifetime, we can just refer back to so much that we have not known what to do with, that we've repressed. Pain and woundedness and karmas from our past end up getting repressed down into the subconscious layer or level of our mind. And so we need practices to help clear these out, because they obscure, they block, they hide the light of our soul and our connection to the light of spirit. The transparencies on the glass have to be looked at and processed out. There's a saying in my field that if you don't process it out, you'll act it out, right? So that's really, I think, clear to see if we look at our lives very carefully, is that there are certain things that come out in reactivity, they come out in habitual patterns. We don't seem to have much control over them. These are patterns that we haven't processed out yet. So they act themselves out in our life in reactions to one another, in certain ways of seeing the world around us, of interacting with the world around us. They influence how we interpret things, the stories that we project onto things. And yet we don't know it, because these have been pushed down into the subconscious layer. The subconscious level of mind is simply that level of mind where we don't take our awareness. We can learn to do that, take the brilliant light of awareness down into the shadow and begin to perceive and work with things that need to be processed out. Now, generally, people prefer practices that seek to attune to the light more than they are attracted to practices that work with the shadow, because in order to work with the shadow and to clear these layers out, we have to be courageous and lean into aspects of ourselves that are uncomfortable. Nevertheless, when we do, there is a great outpouring of grace. We learn to collaborate with that grace in the clearing out of our karmas and our samskaras and our unresolved issues, so that more and more the light shines through. All right, so we're going to move through several clearing practices. Purification is a significant part of the spiritual path, and one that, for good reason, people tend to avoid. And I spent probably 15 years of my meditative practices trying to go around the shadow, trying to circumvent the shadow and just get into the light. And it's possible to do in a meditation to circumvent the shadow and just go into the light. That's totally possible to do. But it doesn't resolve the shadow. And so all that material is still active and alive when you're not meditating. It continues to strongly influence your life. And if what we want is to come to a place where we're stabilizing in a sense of higher consciousness, a sense of unity love consciousness, if we want to stabilize in those states, then it's necessary for us to clear out what obscures that light. All right, so the practice that I'm really excited to teach you this morning, I learned from a great teacher whose name is John Jones. And this practice is called the Who Is It That practice. Maybe some of you have heard this. Let me share my screen with you, and so we can look at this together. Okay, who is it that? So who is it that is a question that we ask. It's a way of beginning to focus our attention onto and into these unresolved energies in our life. It's a way of identifying them. Now, this is a really clever practice because in general, most of us identify very much with these karmas and these unresolved issues. We have learned in our culture to identify with our experience. So if we feel anxious, then we say, I am anxious. And if we feel sad, we say, I am sad. And if we're angry, we say, I'm angry, as though those emotional states identified us and defined us. And of course, they don't. These are just mind states. They come and go. So we want to learn to identify them as a pattern to be worked with rather than something like a character flaw, something that I am. And so we ask the question, let's use the top one as an example, anxiety. If I'm feeling anxiety, we ask the question, who is it that's feeling anxious right now? Who is it that's feeling anxious right now? Do you see how the nature of that question helps me to disidentify from the experience, but not to dissociate from the experience? We disidentify with the experience so that we can look at it, work with it, process it. Who is it that feels anxious right now? So it's very important for you to understand about this practice. When we ask the question, who is it that, and then fill in the blank, we're not looking for a conceptual answer. So we're not trying to refer to the intellect. Oh, the one who's feeling anxious right now is maybe it's the 7-year-old whose mother was abusive. And, we're not looking for any of that kind of figuring it out. That's not what this question is seeking to do. We ask the question and then look for the spike of emotional energy that results from asking that question. And then we focus in on that. Now, this is a super important part of the practice. It's what makes it powerful, but also for some makes it a little confusing. So if I'm feeling sad right now, I would say, who is it that feels so sad right now? And then I would look for the emotional response. It'll show up in the body or in the subtle bodies as a spike of sad energy. And then you turn your attention to that sad energy. You open your heart to that sad energy and you just feel it through. Who is it that feels so alone and lonely? We turn our attention to that experience of loneliness, that deep feeling of aloneness in the world. We seek to relax all around it. We seek to soften all around it and just focus in on the raw energy of that experience. So whatever it is that we can do this in one of two ways. Whatever it is that you're feeling in the moment, you can ask a question, who is it that feels such and so, right? I've got a list here. It's nowhere near comprehensive. There's hundreds of things that we could write down here. So we can either, when we're feeling something and we want to work with it, we ask the question, who is it that's feeling this way right now? And zoom in on the emotional energy and open all around it to allow that emotional energy to express and to release. That's the idea. That's what makes this a clearing practice. We're looking to locate it and to let it express in the light of our awareness. And in that process, it will typically release itself. Now, there are some patterns that are quite tenacious and, and quite integrated into the mind's story of ourselves, and those are a little harder to let go. Who is it that feels so incredibly unhappy, right? Turn to that energy of unhappiness. So it's difficult for the Western mind to get this at first because we want something to do, to fix it. We want to do something to make it better. And this is not that practice. This isn't, oh, as soon as I locate it, now I have to figure it out and I have to parse it and I have to explore it and I have to dissect it and I have to, so that I can get rid of it and not feel this way. That's not what this practice is. This is a practice of learning to bring love to our suffering, to our pain, to the parts of ourself that don't feel connected to love. So who is it that's so desperate for love and affection? And we turn our attention to that energy as it's showing up in our experience. We relax all around it. As though it were in a Tupperware container, we peel off the lid, let ourselves feel it as fully as possible, shine the light of awareness on it. Now, the light of awareness is the light of love. The light of awareness in the way that we're using the word doesn't come from the mind. It is a function of the soul. So as this awareness penetrates into this energy that we're watching, it has a profoundly nurturing, healing effect. It is the energy of love. And these parts of us exist in their repressed suffering, largely because they have always felt cut off from love. Some of these parts develop and organize around early childhood trauma. We call them subpersonalities. And they carry the energy of that trauma. And we can even understand that that's happened, but until we ventilate that the energy of that trauma, it will continue to operate in our life, albeit subconsciously. It will continue to operate in our life, in our interactions, in the way that we see the way the world triggers us, right? In certain styles of interacting with the world. And a lot of these styles will just feel like me because they have been a part of my life, all my life, maybe for lifetimes. So we ask the question, who is it that feels so desperate for love and affection? We turn our attention, our awareness, and just open to that raw energy. Let it express. Let it run its course. Let it go. Meanwhile, we're watching with the energy of love and acceptance. We're breathing. And every 30 or 45 seconds, you repeat the question. And that kind of helps to relocate it. And you keep repeating the question until the time comes when you repeat the question and there's no energy connected to it any longer. There's no spike of pain or discomfort related to the question any longer. Now, again, this may happen with some of what you're feeling just right there in the moment. Loneliness can turn into a sense of of belonging and of peace, right? Just in that moment, after working with that energy for a little while in a single setting, that energy can shift. There's other things that may take a little longer. Not everything gives way in a single session or a single sitting. So you begin to make this a practice. And I would strongly recommend that you would keep track of these questions. I have a journal full of these questions. And I like to go back over them and see which one of them are still active, which one of them are still active, and which ones are relatively resolved at this point in my life. So life will keep kicking things up. You may have noticed, especially right now with kind of the very challenging times we're living in, you may have noticed that life keeps kicking things to the surface. Every day the news is grim, and there's lots of stuff happening in our lives that are not going as we might choose, as we might want. And so things are brought to the surface if we pay attention to ourselves. This requires a willingness to kind of turn off our screens, our devices, and take some time to sit with what's right there, right at the surface of our experience. As I say, this takes a little courage because you have to be willing to feel discomfort here in order to let these energies go. You can only heal what you can feel, as the saying goes. All right, so I'd like to give you the opportunity to ask any questions about this that you may have. Is the practice clear? Again, I want to emphasize this is so important. We're going to work with this in a few minutes as we do the practice together. I want to emphasize the important part of this is when you ask the question, who is it that's feeling anxious right now? Don't get into an intellectual process. Don't try to figure it out. Don't look for something conceptual. We want to go right to the emotional energy. Who is it that's feeling anxious right now? Ooh, spike, there's the energy of anxiety. I bathe it in the light of awareness. I give it lots of room, relax, let it open, let it express. And as you just breathe with it, you'll notice that the energy begins to dissipate. And then you'll say it again. Who's feeling anxious right now? Oh, there it is again. So you'll watch it kind of fluctuate on an emotional intensity scale. I like to think of a scale 0 to 10, 10 being, super intense. So you might say, who is it that feels anxious right now? And it spikes at an 8. And then as you sit with it for a while, it like mellows down to a 3 or 4. And then you ask it again and it spikes to a 7. And then you sit with it for a while and it mellows down to a 3. Then you ask it again and it spikes to a 6. And then you sit with it a while. Do you see how this works?
I have a question.
All right. Please go ahead.
So even though not following the conceptualization or the thoughts down the rabbit hole, some do come up, as you're
certainly.
So is the job to kind of turn away from those thoughts? That's one question.
So I would say, yes, don't let the thoughts distract you, carry you away. We're wanting to give all the awareness to the actual energy of this issue, whatever it is. It's not to say that whatever comes to you, especially if it's an intuitive insight, isn't important. It's just not part of this exercise.
Right. So another question too about focus and intention. So I'm not, I'm trying to stay, bring my attention back to the emotion. But then there's the other element of shining love to that, which
yes.
is kind of another focus a little bit, I feel, as I'm listening to you. So do I sit with that emotion for a while, just really breathing into it, really, letting it breathe, and then move over to the love and shining the love towards it?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly, that's great that you're perceiving this. So that's exactly what we'll do. However, as you practice this after a while, you begin to sense that anytime you turn your awareness to something, love is flowing to it, just because that is the true nature of awareness.
Okay.
But it's a great question. So when you're feeling the energy, you don't want to like look around for something more comfortable to pop back into, right? Like, okay, loving kindness. I want to feel that. I don't want to feel this sadness. That's not what we're wanting to do. We develop the courage to hang out with the painful energy and sit with it for a while. And then, yes, we'll begin to very subtly bring in the light and bring in the sense of loving kindness. And so, but it's very, I'm so happy that you're helping me to clarify, but we want to hang out in that discomfort for a while without any kind of intervention, and just watch how, by just being with it, as we couldn't when we were 5, 7, 9, we couldn't be with it, so we repressed it. Now we want to just be with it as much as we can learn to be with it, just from a sense of openness and acceptance and loving kindness. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, and I think with practice, there's also the element of I can trust that I can just sit with this and it's not going to like be where I'm going to stay, you know?
Yes, that's again, these are really wonderful questions and comments. We at first, it is a little difficult at first because it almost feels like, oh, I'm letting myself be re-traumatized. No, we have to remember the intention. This is a clearing practice. So the whole entire intention that we set at the very beginning is, we ask for grace, set our intentions. The whole intention is to clear this material, to ventilate it. It's one of my favorite words.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's a room thickly full of smoke, and we want to open a window. It doesn't help just to avoid the room. We want to open the window and let it ventilate. Right? So it does mean that it's like, whoa, this is kind of scary stuff, but as you begin to feel that it does dissipate and you feel lighter at the end of it, with practice, it results in a greater confidence in your ability to handle whatever needs to come up and express.
Thank you.
Scott, I have a question.
Please.
I'm thinking specifically about an 18-year-old that I'm treating as a therapist, but it's also myself. There's this tendency sometimes to, let's say you're going to anxiety, to try to prove that it's there. I mean, this young man knows he already feels anxious. So the last time I asked him to do kind of what you're doing in a session, he started talking about, well, yeah, I'm really anxious. And he started giving a litany of it. How do you avoid the litany? Because I understand he's trying to prove to me and to himself that he really is an anxious person, but this only makes him more anxious, of course.
Yeah, so I would say something like, and this is what I also do with myself. So what are you experiencing that indicates that you're anxious right now? In other words, we're wanting to turn him back to his experience.
Come into the presence.
Come into the present and come into the experience. So this is how so many of us, whether we're therapy clients or not, we find ways to stay just above the emotional energy, including thinking about it a lot. That was one of my favorite defenses. If I could just think about and think about and think about, I could keep distant from the actual emotional energy.
Right.
So in this situation, as with our own, we invite them back to ask questions that invite them back to their actual felt experience.
Yeah,
and then
Jamie
I would go,
never do this, Scott.
No, I understand. Oh, I totally understand, James. Totally for somebody else. So then we'd also say, can you stay with that a little bit? Can you stay out of your thoughts and just feel that? Where is it in the body? Where is it on the intensity scale? Right? Just keep asking questions that help them to just stay present best they can. Now some clients can only be in it for 15, 20 seconds before they have to pop out of it because it overwhelms them. That's totally fine. Session after session, they develop a greater ability to stay present with the discomfort, which of course is the key to healing. The key to healing is to be able to be present with the repressed emotional energy and not become it. That's the key to emotional healing, to be present, to feel it, and not get lost in it.
Right.
And here the psychospiritual principle is, who is it that's watching? Who is this witness self, this observer? Well, it turns out to be the soul. And the soul has unlimited capacity to heal whatever is going on in the personality. All right. Great question. Thank you so much. Who else has a question? Make sure to mute yourself when you're done with the questions. Yes, please, Gwen.
So in other words, I mean, I automatically went to an experience already.
Yeah.
And that's what you're suggesting. Sit in that experience.
That's right.
Okay,
And ask yeah, that's right. And ask the question. Would you be comfortable just using one word to describe the experience, the emotional component of it?
Control.
Control.
Total out of, my life was totally out of control. I had no control.
Great. So there's two questions to ask here. One is, who is it that feels so out of control? And with that one, you're going to feel all kinds of discomfort and anxiety and running around like a, the energy can be very, very frenetic. Who is it that feels so out of control? That's one question. And the other question is, who is it that needs to be in control? And you may feel that there's some very different kinds of energies with those different questions. Who is it that needs to be in control? So again, do you see the importance of asking the question is that I'm able to then look at the energy as a pattern I'm working with rather than something I am. Who is it means it's somebody other than the me that's asking, right? Who is it means it's somebody other than the me that's asking. Now, we're not wanting to fragment ourselves up into a whole bunch of pieces. We already are. Mind is already fragmented into a whole bunch of pieces. This is as we heal it and release these energies, there's an integration that takes place. It's very powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you. These are great questions. Thank you for helping me to clarify this practice. All right, what else?
I want to ask something, Scott.
Yes, please.
What I don't understand is if really awareness is asking the question, right?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
You say that first you feel this negative, whatever emotions, and then awareness comes in and heals. But I don't get how both those things can happen with the same thing.
So what's being healed is an aspect of mind that does not feel connected to, I'll just keep using this word soul, but you could use the word Christ consciousness or Buddha nature or your higher self. I'll just use the word soul today. This part that's anxious or feels out of control is a part of me that does not feel connected to soul. It doesn't feel aligned to soul.
Okay.
But let's say that, that I was abandoned when I was 6. And there's a kind of a sub-personality that organizes around that trauma of being abandoned. So then later on, my girlfriend can say, hey, I don't want to be with you anymore. And it spikes that up and all kinds of things. Anybody that says, hey, I don't want to, I don't like what you just did. The anxiety comes to the surface, right? So this feeling of abandonment is stuck inside of me. And that part of me that holds the abandonment feels no sense of connection whatsoever to soul. That little sub-personality is the energy, the experience, the painful experience of abandonment encapsulated now in a sub-personality. And it feels alone always. So I bring awareness to it as a means of connecting love and light and soul to this sub-personality that's been lost. It's been like out in the wilderness of my subconscious. Is this helping to answer your question?
How does it come in? How does the awareness come in that heals? In other words, does it just sort of happen as you work through this process?
Yes, but you'll
Okay,
get
that's
good
what
at
I wondered.
you'll get good at noticing I am not the anxiety, I am the awareness that's watching the anxiety.
Okay.
So as I learn to disidentify from my experience, I settle in to a new kind of identity, that of awareness. We'll practice that at the beginning of our practice here this morning, is to kind of get in touch with what we mean when we say awareness. So then the goal is to connect everything that is, unresolved in us, little by little, to connect with them through awareness.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Yes, please, Jean. Oh, no, that was you. Okay, sorry.
Maureen.
Maureen. Hi, Maureen.
Hi, Scott. Actually, it's not a question, but thanks, Jean, for what she asked, what your answer, because I just wanted to say for myself, when you started this, I got a specific energy that I wanted to deal with that's going on right now in the present. And it's a situation right now in the present. And so I thought, oh, I can't wait till we start that because I really want to go to it, and do this. And then as you were talking and Jean was talking, I went, oh, wow, brought it way back to an experience way, way, way long ago. And I did really not see the connection until then with the situation right now with the way back when here we go again, all that too. So
yes.
I just wanted to say that I thought it was going to be, more simpler than it's going to be now. Because
it's simple to do the practice. It ends up, because we are complex beings and multi-leveled, it ends up that we'll touch in on, as you discovered, it's like, oh, this actually has roots all the way back down into that.
Right.
But that's actually very exciting to understand, because as you're working with whatever the current trigger is, you're actually healing all the way down into those roots.
That's exactly what my point was. Yeah, for sure.
And you want to make sure that you're praying to that end, and you're setting intentions to that end, that whatever I'm experiencing right now, that this healing energy can touch all the way down, across all lifetimes, is how I like to say it.
Very cool. Thank you.
And also that gives me another thing to say, thank you, Maureen, that when we are doing this work and working with a particular thing, it's not uncommon for other things to make themselves known, or deeper levels. Like, let me show you again on the sharing the screen here. So 3/4 of the way down, who is it that feels so desperate for love and affection? And so if I could be sitting with that part of me that feels desperate for love and affection, and then a deeper level make itself known. What is the deeper level? Who is it that feels undeserving of love and affection? Right? Or who is it that, another example of it, who is it that feels abandoned right now? Maybe I lost a friend, or somebody's breaking up with me, or just somebody is scolding me, or whatever. I get bad reviews on a Facebook post, whatever it is, and I feel this abandonment, and I'm sitting with, who is it that feels so abandoned right now? And it drops me into the deeper level. Who is it that feels abandonable? You see the difference between those two? Who is it that feels fundamentally abandonable? Okay, so these are just examples of how, as you bring the light of awareness into something uncomfortable, it's likely to kind of open up insight into other things that need to be touched with awareness and healed. And this is why, for me, it's so important to keep track of this process in a journal, so that I can stay focused on one, write down, this other thing that came to me, keep working on these things. We're mapping out and clearing what's called the karmic storehouse. It's the phrase in the Eastern traditions. You know, in the West, of course, we're just talking about the subconscious, where things get repressed down into. So we're mapping it out and bringing the light of awareness into these dark places. And as you can imagine, it does take a little courage. These are great questions. Who else has a question? Yeah, so helpful. Thank you, because you're helping me to clarify the nature of this practice with your questions. I'll wait for just a moment in case somebody wants to ask, and then.
Just a quick one, Scott.
Sure.
What in your own life or in the lives of your patients and other people here, what do you think is the most common barrier to the process you're talking about? If you had to pick one barrier,
so
one resistance or something.
It would be fear. If I had to pick one, the three main fears, as I understand them, are fear of pain, fear of sickness, fear of death. So one of those is fear of pain, and we have an inherent kind of evolutionarily installed fear of discomfort and pain. And so in general, what we've learned, especially in this culture, is how to avoid pain.
Just get rid of it.
Repress it, turn on the TV, have a drink of wine, there's 1,000 things we do to distract and to avoid our discomfort. About the only place as a people, as a culture, we've overcome this, at least some portion of the culture has, is at the physical level. We're willing to go to the gym and tolerate discomfort on behalf of long-term health and fitness. You know, we come home and family member says, "How was the workout?" "Oh man, I can hardly comb my hair. It was just fantastic." What? You're hurting so much you can hardly comb your hair, and yet you're saying it was a great workout? Yet you see how we value that kind of pain because we know it's contributing to something positive. So what we haven't done yet is translated that over into the psycho-emotional area, where we realize, oh, to tolerate discomfort here is actually an investment into my long-term health and well-being. And even in this case, my long-term growth and development spiritually.
Right. So that does feel to me like what the inside of the word stigma means about mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, good. So the answer, that was a long answer. The short answer is probably fear is the thing that keeps us from doing this. And as Deanna pointed out, I think it was Deanna, that the chances are good that as we practice this, the more we practice this, and the more we see, oh, I can be with it and it can dissipate. It can go from an 8 to a 4. That's really good news. I can intervene on my own behalf. And then the practice picks up some momentum. All right. Any other questions or comments before we begin? All right. So what I need you to do then is, in the practice, I'm going to ask you to find something to work on. And that'll be, something that's up for you right now, perhaps. Something that's up for you like today, I mean. Let me just again go back and share this screen so that you can see what I'm asking you to locate. Something that you can turn into a sentence. Who is it that? This can be a long-term issue that you're working on. Who is it that feels nervous when I have to stand up and give a report to my team? Who is it that feels out of control? Who is it that feels unhappy? Who is it that feels antsy? Who is it that feels sad? Who is it that's angry? We didn't do this one to the bottom. Who is it that feels abandoned by God? Who is it that feels angry at God? Who is it that feels hatred for God, for my partner, for my next door neighbor, for the governor, for, you know. So I want you to find in yourself something that you would normally turn away from or stay busy to avoid. Something that you'd eat a donut to distract from, or a glass of wine. All right, now we're not going to go heavily into that quite yet. I want to start off with something else. I want to start with an intention. Let's begin our practice now. I want to start with an intention. And that intention is to connect the loving, healing power of higher consciousness to everything in our system that is wounded, that feels lost, that we feel shame about, all our karmas that keep us stuck in feeling small and limited, everything in the karmic storehouse that needs the light of God. We're setting the intention to use this practice to grow in our ability to make that connection, to bring love to pain and suffering. Now, I'd like you, in your own way, quietly in your own mind, to ask for help. Open to grace, ask for help. You may not be a prayer. Open to that which is higher than yourself, the larger whole that you are a part of, the wisdom and intelligence and love of the larger whole that you are a part of, the one consciousness that you are an expression of. Reach out to that, up to that, and ask for help in this practice. For help in learning how to heal everything that it's necessary to heal so that you can begin to get more profoundly and permanently attuned to your own inner light, to the light of higher consciousness. All right, now let's begin by just watching the breath. Let's just connect with what it is to be aware. Watch the inhalation and the exhalation. And acknowledge that you are aware of the inhalation and exhalation. Be consciously aware of each inhalation and each exhalation, the way it moves the body. If you slow the breath down a little bit, and be as interested in the experience of being aware as you are in the breath. I'm going to say that again. Be as interested in the experience of being aware as you are the experience of breathing. So change your focus of awareness to the sensations in your left hand. There's no need to think or to analyze or to ask questions. Just connect to the raw experience, the raw energy of sensation in your left hand. Be consciously aware of the sensations in your left hand. Switch it over to your right hand. Be consciously aware, consciously aware. I am aware of being aware of the sensations in my right hand. This is the kind of awareness that we're wanting to touch our painful emotional energies with. This open, quiet, accepting, agenda-free, criticism-free, judgment-free awareness. Has no preference, pushes no agenda. There's no scolding from this awareness. No, oh, this should be different. It's just connecting with it as it is. And notice that the awareness is completely at peace. The awareness that's watching the sensation in your right hand is completely at peace. Now, can you find anything in your system that is not at peace? Are there some things that you're going to use the question to identify? Are there some issues going on in your life? Are there some energies that you can feel right now that are not perfectly at peace? Begin to formulate questions that help you to identify them. Who is it that feels that energy right now? And if any of these questions on the screen are helpful, who is it that feels so alone and abandoned right now? Who is it that feels so discontent? It's not to say that these energies define your whole life, not at all. We're just looking for the pockets of this that exist in us in order to ventilate them. So we ask, who is it that, so that we can locate that sometimes very quiet or very subtle or behind the scenes kind of part of ourselves. Anything that feels shaky or tentative in you. Who is it that feels so out of control? And every 30 seconds or so, repeat the question. Feel the emotional spike of energy. Hold that in your awareness. Soften all around it so that it can reveal itself, open up. Feel it more. Let the emotional energy express. Give it full permission to make itself known to you. Whenever your concentration wanders, say the question again to refocus you. Just notice with curiosity whether or not just being present with the emotional energy in this way, in just a very open, accepting, non-critical way, notice if there's any fluctuation on the intensity scale, a sense of a slow dissipation of the energy. You may be feeling some resistance to the practice, in which case the question is, who is it that's feeling resistance right now? And then you focus the light of awareness onto that energy, that raw energy of resistance. Or something similar to that is, who is it that does not want to let go of this energy? Like maybe you're working with anger. Who is it that feels angry right now? And that energy is not leaving. You might ask the question, who is it that doesn't want to let go of this anger? Who is it that feels the need for this anger? And as you're working at one layer, don't be surprised if a deeper layer opens up. And then you just formulate questions that will help you to focus in on that deeper layer. That deeper layer, that deeper issue. Now just begin to have the sense that the awareness that's watching its nature is light. I like to think of it as focusing the eyes of my awareness on this uncomfortable energy. And through that focus, light flows, the light of love. And you can have this intention that whatever the focus of the eyes of my awareness is on, whatever the eyes of my awareness focus upon, love and light is flowing to that. Across all time, on all levels, the light of love is flowing to that. So really have the idea of opening this up to a larger scale, that whatever you're focusing on most likely has roots down into other experiences, perhaps even other lifetimes. So just have this intention. Whatever the eyes of my awareness is focusing upon, love and light flows through that connection, through that attention, across all lifetimes and incarnations, across all time, on all levels of the being. More and more, you grow in your understanding. Oh, I am not these energies. I am the light of the soul. I am this brilliant awareness, this pure consciousness, bringing universal light and universal love, universal healing power, and moving perseveringly, meticulously through the entire karmic storehouse, processing out every transparency that blocks the light. As one thing may feel somewhat kind of quotes done, there may be something else that makes itself known. And again, it's very important that you're looking at any part of you that's resisting, any part of you that's uncomfortable with the process, any part of you that wants to be done, that feels antsy or restless. Create a question. Who is it that's feeling antsy right now? Who is it that wants to be done with this practice? As you just focus the eyes of your awareness on that energy, see where it takes you. Now, for those of you that were with me on Wednesday night, in the same kind of way, just very subtly turn your intuitive awareness up and perceive that high above the head, there is light flowing down. And it enters in through the crown, comes down into the heart, and then flows to everything that you have been watching. I like to do this in a form of a breathing practice where your inhalation is in from above, down through the crown and into the heart. That's your inhalation. And in your exhalation, the light just radiates out through the entire system, the body, mind, the energy field. Have a sense however the mind visualizes it, that the light is coming down and radiating through the karmic storehouse, through the subconscious mind, through every aspect of the shadow. Breathe the light in through the crown, from high above the head, into the heart, and then breathe it out into your entire system. Just filling your entire being with light, the descending light of spirit, divine love and wisdom and healing power and grace. So I've been reminded through a chat, very helpful, very, very helpful, that it's important that you understand we're not looking for perfection here. We're not looking to so clear it out that there's not an ounce of discomfort in your system anymore. It's not what we're looking to do. This isn't a tricky technique to feel better. Please hear that. This is not a tricky technique to feel better. This is a practice of bringing love to our pain, to our woundedness, to our suffering. And in learning how to do this in the lab of our own life, we learn how to bring that same love into the suffering of the world. So it's not necessary to stay focused on something and then be discouraged if it feels like the energy is still a little present, even though you've been doing this practice. That's totally fine. We'll come back to it. We'll cycle through these things. See if just for a moment you can be more identified as the light and awareness than you are the wound or the pain or the suffering. Let your identity shift from the pain and suffering to the awareness channeling light. So that you notice that the awareness that's watching pain is not itself in pain. This is very important. The awareness that's watching anxiety is not itself anxious. See if you can observe this. The awareness is always in perfect peace. Because the awareness that's looking into your system is a part of the one field of universal consciousness. So this awareness isn't a function of the mind, and therefore does not share the qualities of the mind any more than the open sky shares the qualities of the clouds moving through it. The sky is not touched or contaminated or affected by the clouds, though it can appear that way from our perspective. This light of awareness, this descending light of pure spirit, this observer that's channeling that light, is not affected by the qualities that are being observed. And as these parts of ourselves that feel so lost and alone slowly come to dissipate their load, to drop their load, they are integrated into this light, into this larger sense of wholeness. And our suffering comes to an end. That's the goal of the practice. So we stay in it just to be a channel of love. We go and search for whatever is in our system that is not yet vibrating and resonating with the energy, with the vibration of love. We go and search for it. We don't just wait until it comes up and overwhelms us. We go looking for it, bringing the light of love to all these various parts. And long, long before everything is cleaned out, we more consistently have learned to shift our identity into that of loving awareness. See if you can just feel that right now. A sense of expansive awareness. Awareness is not contained in the body. The body lives within the field of awareness. Awareness is vast and tranquil, full of love for all things being observed. All things being observed are loved by this vast open field of pure awareness. It's a field that's luminous. This field of awareness is light and equanimity and wholeness. And little by little, as we make ourselves available to this, this field of awareness makes itself known to us until we begin to recognize it as our own true nature. And make an even greater commitment to go back for every part of ourselves still lost in the darkness, to go back and connect with every part of ourselves still lost in the darkness, bringing it into the light. All right, take a nice deep breath. Notice how the body is being supported by your chair or the couch. As you open your eyes and let the body move, still see if you can not snap immediately back into that old sense of self. Can you still have a sense of being the open field of awareness, looking through these physical eyes now, looking around the room? Can you still have that feel that you are the spacious awareness within which the body is held? That you don't stop at your skin. That there's a sense of connection with all things that share this same field, this universal matrix. All right. That's the clearing practice this morning. So glad that you came to be a part of it.